Hey everyone, welcome to Taku E4 E5. As a chess player, you've probably noticed how grandmasters record something on a piece of paper after every move. Those weird letters and numbers probably look like gibberish when you see them for the first time, yeah? Trust me though, they're actually pretty easy to understand and use once you get the hang of it. What is chess notation? Chess notation is simply a way to record chess moves using a special set of numbers and symbols. It's like a code that helps you replay games, analyze strategies, and even communicate with other chess players. There are a few different types of notation, but we'll focus on the most common one called the algebraic notation. First thing that we should pay attention to is that most chessboards have numbers and letters written on them. Numbers are written vertically and letters horizontally. Horizontally, there are 8 lines of squares represented by the numbers, and these are referred to as ranks. For instance, we have the first rank, second rank, third rank. Vertically, there are also 8 lines of squares, and these are represented by the letters and referred to as files. We have A file, B file, all the way to H file. These letters and numbers help the player determine the position of each square as well as the piece that is on that square. For instance, a square on the E file and on the 4th file is referred to as the E4 square. A square on the C file and on the 6th rank is referred to as the C6 square. Now let's talk about piece symbols. We know how to locate each square. Now we need to know the symbols that will represent each piece. So there are 6 piece symbols which represent the 6 types of pieces that a player uses on the board. For the rooks, we use the capital letter R. For the knights, we use the capital letter N. For the bishops, we use the capital letter B. For the queens, we use the capital letter Q. For the kings, we use the capital letter K. And for the pawns, we use the capital letter P. The symbols of each piece are written in capitals. For pawns, however, we don't usually use the P symbol. We just use the coordinate of the square. It's easier to distinguish the pawn moves from the other pieces that way. So let's say we have a knight piece standing on the F3 square or the square in the F file and on the 3rd rank. You simply put the symbol of the piece that has moved in this fashion. In this case, the N for the knight, and then the coordinate of or location of the square, that is the F3 square. Therefore, when a knight moves to F3, we call that movement NF3. Okay, let's have another example. Let's say the king moves from E1 to D2. We put the symbol of the king, K, then we put the square's location, D2, and the coordinate and in chess notation it will be KD2. Alright, before we move on, let's have a pawn move example as well. A pawn moves 2 squares from E7 to E5. How do we write that in chess notation? You got it. It's PE5, or most commonly just E5 would do just fine. Okay, so now you know how to record the location of each square where each piece moves to, as well as how to indicate which piece has moved. However, what if you have the same type of squares that can land on the same position? A person reading your recordings may be confused as to which piece has moved during their review of the game, leading to them putting the wrong piece on the square. For instance, let's say you have this position right. Here is white to play. Now if you pay attention to the knights, you will notice that both of them can land on the e2 square. Now if you simply recorded white's move as ne2, meaning that the knight has moved to e2, we know that one of the knights has moved there, but what we don't know is which one. So in order to indicate that the knight that is on g1 is the one moving to e2, we have to write ng e2, meaning that the knight on the g file has moved to the e2 square. Remember, you can only do this if identical pieces can move to the same square. Okay, now you know the symbols for the squares and the symbols for each piece. But how do you indicate that a pawn is being promoted to a queen, or that the king has been castled, or that a piece has been captured? This brings us to our next set of symbols that are used in chess notation. We'll start with capturing. Capturing is represented by the symbol X. When a piece captures another piece, you indicate the letter of the piece. Then you put the X as well as the square where it is capturing. In this example, the black knight is about to capture the pawn on d4. We write the move like this: nx d4. When it comes to pawns, we can exclude the symbol of the piece, that is P, and go straight to mentioning the square where they are capturing. In this case, the pawn on e5 captures the pawn on d4, so we write x d4. Okay, we move on to castling. Castling is represented by O-O in chess notation. O-O is the symbol for indicating short castling, and then O-O-O, meaning 3 O's instead of 2, indicates long castling. Okay, now let's move on to promotion. To indicate the promotion of a pawn into a piece, say a queen, we use an equal sign like so. A8 equals Q. The pawn has moved on to the A8 square and is being promoted into a queen. Now let's move on to how we write en passant. To indicate en passant, you simply write it as a normal capture. Let's say a white pawn is on e5. A black pawn moves from d7 to d5. Then white captures the black pawn on d5 with en passant, landing on the d6 square. So how do we write this? We simply write ex d6. However, if you want to indicate that en passant has happened, simply write ep after ex d6 to indicate that en passant has happened. Now let's talk about check. To indicate check, you simply put a plus sign next to the move symbol. That represents the move leading to a check. The knight, for example, captures the pawn on c2 and also puts the king in check. The symbol for this is nxc2 plus. We also have a symbol for checkmate. Checkmate is indicated with a hash or 2 plus signs instead of 1. In this case, this would be, we could just say nxc2 plus plus or nxc2 hash, which is the same thing. Alright, now we have all the necessary symbols to help you record your games. We just need to know how this would look in a game. We won't go far, we will just look at a popular opening. The reel appears to help us illustrate this. So to record your moves and your opponent's moves, you have to get a piece of paper, underline that in half, then split that in half, then you put white on one side and black on the other side. So your moves will be recorded going down. You put e4, then they put e5 on black, and then you go move on to the second move. White plays the second move, then black plays the second move, and that's how you'll be recording your moves. Okay, let's begin. So white moves the e2 pawn to e4, opening up the pathway for the bishop and the queen. Black responds by putting their e7 pawn on e5, opening up his bishop and his or her queen as well. White sees this occurrence and decides to target that pawn by putting his kingside knight on f3, targeting the central pawn on e5. And black quickly places his knight on c6, his queenside knight on c6, in order to defend that pawn on e5. Okay, so seeing that the queen's knight, the black queen's knight is defending the pawn and has a foothold in the center, white decides to target the bishop to target the knight by placing the bishop on b5. The kingside bishop targets the knight on nc6 in order to dislodge the defense that it has in the center there. So what will black do? Black decides, okay, go ahead and plays a6, saying, I want you to trade, daring white to trade the bishop with the knight. The white bishop, the player using white, looks at this threat and thinks twice about taking the knight on nc6. He decides to retreat his bishop, still targeting the knight on a4. So the bishop goes to a4. Bishop goes to a4. Okay, so black decides to continue his development, places his kingside bishop on c5. On c5. Okay, so white looks at this position, decides to continue his development, and does the castling on the king side, short castling on the king side. Okay, taking the king out of the way, and developing his pieces at the same time. So black decides to continue his development and open the pathway for his king to also castle. He places his knight on nf6. His kingside knight goes on nf6. Okay. After that, the white player places the rook that has just been castled to e1, placing the castle in the center and activating it. And then Black decides to play d6, d6, which is the queen, the pawn in front of the queen. d6 opens the pathway for the other bishop on c8, so that it can move as well. And then we have a c3. We have c3 in white. Okay, so white moves their pawn on c3. This move serves to claim the center as well, the d4 square, and also hinders the knight from moving to d4 or b4, and also opens up the other diagonal for the bishop and the queen there. Okay, so black decides to continue his development and castle the king, and then white decides to start provoking black and attacking in the center. So he moves the pawn to d4, threatening the bishop and the pawn in the center there, telling them to start attacking. And then the white pawn on the e file captures the white pawn. The black pawn on the e file captures d4, and then white responds back with d4. And that's how we'll be recording our moves as the game progresses. Notice how if you use Lichess or chess.com, that there's chess notation almost always at the bottom or at the top. In this example, it's chess.com. The moves are being recorded at the bottom. Instead of the letters, they're putting little drawings of the actual pieces that have moved. And above that, there's the type of opening that I was using. They call this one the Ruy Lopez opening, Morphy defense, Neo Agankilson variation or something like that. And at the top of the analysis is the best possible moves, or the most moves that has been used during a game. The next possible moves, you see the number 9th move, options of what to do next after you move. And that white bar at the very top, there's a white bar that says plus 0.56. It shows that white is leading in this game. It's like showing who has the advantage, the black side and the white side. So the white side is more than the black side, as you can see. So it shows that white has an advantage. And you can use chess.com is used to analyze games, to see previous games that have been played by people like Bobby Fischer and all that, and to review your own games, to see where you went wrong and to improve your style of play. So chess notation is very important. I hope this was a very informative video. If there's something that I missed, please comment in the section below and we'll address it.